minutes so people could still join. Anyway, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your energy. Thank you for coming to our session, CO3 Enchanted Village. We got a little bit of magic, mystery, and mysticism here. And I hope you enjoyed it. So let me share my screen. We are gonna start straight away here. There we go. We got the agenda for today here. And I always like to, before to go ahead and have a jammy, juicy conversation, I would love to be all of us fully present in this session. So I'm gonna play a little meditation, very lightly, but I think it's good because we want to enjoy this as much as possible. So
I can choose when I get a new phone with O2 switch up.
Absolutely.
Like now.
Now. Only O2 lets you switch up to a new phone when it suits you.
How now?
And pays off your current contract. O2, see what you can do.
We are not for
okay, now we're going to do something very interesting. We won't close our eyes, okay? So have what is called soft eyes, which means become aware of the space we're in. Don't focus on me, although you're aware of me on your screen, but actually I'm in your consciousness right now. But just be aware of the space we are in. And now let's start our meditation. So start to observe your breath. Start to observe your breath and don't manipulate it. And notice that even as you observe it, it slows down. Your mind will wander. When you become aware that it wanders, bring it back to your breathing. As it goes in through your nostrils and then out through your nostrils. Okay, now we're going to do something very interesting. You may keep your eyes open, but start to repeat your full name. So I am Deepak Chopra. I am Mary Jo. Repeat it mentally. And now invite all the stresses you have right now, all the things you have to do, your deadlines, all the problems you have. Invite them. Let your awareness fill up with them. Okay, now drop your last name. Just repeat your first name. I am Deepak. Mentally. And this time, invite experiences from your childhood into your awareness. When you were less than 12, your parents, your siblings, your school, your classmates, happy days, not so happy days. And now drop your first name. Just say I am, with no labels attached. I am. Let memories and thoughts fade. Just I am. Now if you want, you can replace I am with aham or om. Just a sound. No associations. Let's do it for a few seconds. Aham. Aham. Now even let that go. Sit quietly and just be aware of being aware. This is our ground state before a thought arises, before a feeling. It's who we really are, a field of infinite potential. Rest in being. Rest in awareness. Rest in existence. Just be. Okay, before we come out, feel all the sensations in your body. I hope you're feeling a little refreshed. You can do this again and do it as often as you want, and you can do it for longer. Thank you.
Well, I think this is now we are fully present. You know that this is the power of now. So we're starting with our magic to be really grounded. Maybe there are other people coming. Maybe we can use also this while maybe other people are also arriving, because this is also to do with the AI. You know, maybe you didn't think you were coming to a session talking about AI. Most of the people now are, you know, having conversations about AI and AI, artificial intelligence. Is technology gonna control the world? Well, that's not the thing that we want to discuss here. But I think it's good. I always play this video to most of our sessions. So I think it's important to, let's set this as well. It's just 1 minute. Well, that is the thing, isn't it? AI is also about alignment and integration. And can you see the alignment there? We are all in different parts of our journeys. We are all a piece of the same puzzle, but, you know, we can also get synchronized. So I think it's a good way to see AI in a different perspective. But anyway, let's go ahead with the session right now. And I want to introduce and first of all give my grateful thank yous to Anton and Tom. They are amazing human beings and also great professionals. And I think they are actually reconciling both. So they are a very good example for what we want in this session. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then they can tell us a little bit more about why is this. Oops. Okay, here. Well, that's me. I just very briefly parenting, the privilege of parenting 3 kids. That's why I'm betting on new generations, combining actually previous experience in green energy and clean tech to support sustainability, the SDGs, and lately also linked to personal development and transformation, and also integrating the IDGs in the development goals with the idea of becoming the change that we want to see in the world, as within, so without. But that's enough about me. We got Anton. Anton is the founder of the House of Transformation and Selgar State. Actually, he could tell us a little bit more as an intro. Anton, can you explain in your own words, your own intro, please?
Yeah, I'm trained as an architect, but I think of myself really as a designer and entrepreneur. And I work in kind of, for the last 12 years, in tech sustainability and property. And more recently, alongside my consulting, I've opened 2 venues, one in London and one in Devon in the countryside, where I'm based right now. And House of Transformation, you can see in the photo, is a double height, multifunctional, nature-inspired event and meeting space. And we rent it out for social events and for business meetings and conferences. And then Selgars is an 8-acre estate in Devon, and we've been transforming it into venue, but also into a co-living space and hopefully a village in time that we can build over the years. So, and we're hosting an event between the 6th and the 9th of July at Selgars Estate called the Enchanted Village, where we bring together people who are curious about new ways of living and working regeneratively, and want to connect with community around these topics and ideas. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Anton. And we also have Tom, which is the founder of the Well Studio and Architecture and Co-Living. But please, Tom, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Thank you, David. It's great to be here on the call with all of you, wonderful people. And I am also an architect, really an activist architect, and someone that's really passionate about using architecture as a way to create a new paradigm for living in the world, which helps people to be connected to themselves, each other, and nature. And we at Well Studio have created a lot of designs in co-living to facilitate this kind of new way of living, where we have more community again and we operate sustainably in the world. So really excited to be on the call today, and looking forward to our discussions.
Okay, thank you so much. So basically, the idea for today is, as you can see there, we want to practice this or remember this idea of the AC/DC, which is all about this electrifying energy, but it's also to do with authentic conversations for deeper connections. So we want this to become a sort of dialogue and a conversation with all the people in this session. And actually, the idea of CO3, we saw already the alignment, with the metronome, how we can get aligned, our biorhythms, but also the I for integration. And CO3 meaning the ecosystem for co-learning, co-working, and co-living, or a new sustainable and thriving way of co-living. So it's about integrating most of these initiatives, and I think here we got the perfect example, and we can open up this discussion, because I think is what we want, what we need, to share our ideas, energy, and actually do this radical humility exercise of knowing that we all have a piece of the same puzzle. With that said, I would love to just start a sort of, let me stop this. So I'm going to just start the conversation, and I would love to have, in the first place, I would love to know, in this case, I'm going to send the question to, let's start with Anton. On the personal side, most of the people now are talking about professional and personal. Is this a duality there? Are we also integrating that into one? What was at a personal level, Anton, what made you start all these initiatives to do with this, house of transformation, Solgar's Enchanted Village? Was there any sort of click or wake-up call for you on the personal level? Please share with us.
There's two, I think, reasons. I think one is going back to my childhood. I'm a Soviet baby. I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian, born in Moscow. And since 3.5 years, I've lived in the UK, and we bounced around all sorts of parts out kind of the suburbs of London. Ended up growing up in Wimbledon and Kingston in a kind of traditional semi-detached house on a big street with nothing but houses and cars. And it was a very kind of isolating place to live, even though there were parks and it was a kind of not a bad market town. There was no sense of shared space, no sense of community beyond your house or your family. And because we were a first generation family, we didn't really know our neighbors, and we weren't integrated into the community. So it was quite an isolating upbringing. And I think that there was definitely from that a desire to live differently, and to not go down that classic nuclear family, house in the suburbs, 2 cars driving everywhere lifestyle, which actually feels like a really inefficient and a really stressful way to live, because you've got to feed all of this consumption, and you've got to pay for all of this unnecessary kind of utilities and spaces, and then you've got this very narrow strip garden. And it felt that this was such a wasteful way of living and such a disconnected way to live, and to aspire to that kind of suburban dream. And then the other thing that kind of inspired me in terms of a house of transformation in the city was I was doing a lot of consulting projects with big real estate developers, and they were all kind of curious about what's this co-living thing and how do we do build to rent, because that's the new market that's booming in the city. And they were all kind of looking at city development at a big scale and trying to think through the customer experience, and also trying to think about how to create added value with their developments. And all of my research led to one thing, which was multifunctional, affordable, dynamic event space. And rather than fitting out your properties with lots of amenities that cost a lot of money and end up pushing the price beyond the affordable point, the research was pointing at actually encouraging developers to be operators themselves and to create within all of their schemes a few really interesting multifunctional rentable spaces that they could manage, that could be part of the way that they market the whole development, the whole neighborhood, but also could be an essential part of community building and also social interaction, not just within the residents living in their building, but also the wider neighborhood. It sounded good, did lots of research projects, some of them very well paid, but in the end, everything kind of just went down to business as usual, partly because of the pandemic, partly because of the recession, partly because banks don't like to lend for unconventional ideas. So if you can get a lease for a supermarket or a lease for a real estate agent, then you can borrow against that, and that makes the whole business model work. And I was a kind of untried, untested idea. So what I decided to in the middle of the pandemic was just to stop trying to convince the industry to go with this idea, but instead just build it myself. And so right above our apartment, I leased a space, and now it's working great. It's actually self-service, and it enabled me to kind of really prove that this works, not just from a conceptual point of view, but also from a business point of view. And actually, I feel that these types of hot spaces or these multifunctional self-run venues should be designed into all developments, and they can be owned by the public sector and done for a public good, or it can be done by a private sector. So this is really where House of Transformation came. And then also the kind of dream of Salgars was also connected to this idea of designing a lifestyle where you could have one foot in the city and one foot in the countryside, because there's some things you just can't do in the city that you can do in the countryside, and vice versa. And so that was always a dream, and I've been able to make that happen, where House of Transformation is a profitable event space, but also our home in London, and then Salgars is our home in the countryside. So yeah, kind of, and now there's this kind of opportunity to start to invite more people into this conversation with Enchanted, and see if we can self-build our own co-housing community here in Devon as well, and kind of completely reimagine this suburban housing model. And instead, we don't have cars, we can walk to the station, we can share amenities and live much more affordably, but actually at a much higher quality of life. Yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Wow. Thank you so much. Very inspiring.
And just to respond to Mike, yes, we live here at Salgars Estate, and then we also, I see both spaces as our home, but the business model is to rent it out for private hire, and we've got lots of bedrooms and facilities here in Devon to do that.
Okay. Well, actually, I met Anton a while ago, and it seems for me that it's been forever. We connected really straight away. And the idea that you're saying of balancing, the cities and the country, and everything that is going on in the virtual world with the real world, with retreats that now many people are resonating with. I think that balance is what is now, many people are receptive, not only at a personal level, even the corporate world is now resonating so much with that. So it's great having these sort of initiatives helping to bridge that gap. So thank you for your story, inspiring story. I'm gonna ask Tom now, because Tom, I reckon is we all love the idea that do what you love and love what you do. That is amazing. But I think Tom has got the privilege to be actually practicing that in real life. So Tom, I mean, you're doing this and you love it, because when I talk to you, I feel the passion. Again, how was that? How that seed started in you, and bringing up all of this amazing good work that you're doing. But how that was starting in you in the beginning?
Thank you, David. It's a great question, and yeah, I do a lot of the time do what I love. Sometimes I have to make ends meet and do other projects as well, but yeah, it's really good to be building an architectural place, an ethos in architecture, specialism in architecture around community living buildings of all kinds. And this whole passion really started for me. I think I actually grew up in the same part of London as Anton, and I also lived in semi-detached suburban house with a garden and nuclear family, which was lovely. But I think my kind of take on it was, is this it? Like, is this all there is? Are we just going to do this for the rest of till the end of time, or is there some way we can evolve here and actually live in even more amazing, exciting, interesting ways, self-expressed ways, but also in response to the needs, the collective action problems that face our societies, like the epidemic of loneliness in our cities, the climate crisis, that how can we actually create spaces where we can be mentally and physically well? And what does that mean in terms of architecture? And when I was at university, I lived in a lot of shared houses. And then after university, I carried on doing that actually in Southeast London, a place called Telegraph Hill. And the real foundational experience I had for this passion for community design was from living in a shared house with 12 others, big old Victorian house on Telegraph Hill with a huge garden, and lots of really interesting people in that space, you know, artists, academics, people that loved gardening, people that loved music, people that wanted to create nice food. All of these people just naturally living in this house together, and naturally, organically, we had this amazing community. And we cooked together in the evenings, we gardened together, we had parties, and we invited people. Lots of people came to the house, and we had open days where people came around the house to visit and see what we were up to. And it was like this beautiful existence. We didn't have much money, but we didn't need money, because really we had everything we needed in this community. And it was it was kind of like the golden days of my 20s. And I think ever since experiencing that and realizing there was another way, I've been on that journey, both as in my personal life, but also as an architect, to kind of try and find that in what I do. And as an architect, that's really, you know, at the heart of what I do. But I also practice meditation. I also practice mindfulness. I also got really into yoga and other kind of well-being activities. So that well-being side came in. And then I co-founded an organization called Conscious Co-Living about 4 or 5 years, maybe 5 years ago now, which was all about how can co-living as a model of living actually facilitate a new paradigm of living, which is a response to the collective action problems in our society. So how can it combat the epidemic of loneliness? How can it be sustainable and reduce individual carbon footprints? And how can it support people to live their own and have good mental and physical well-being in themselves? So that's what we're up to now as Well Studio. And we've done designs around the world for co-living buildings. We talk at events like this, and we carry on looking for clients to work with, to help them to build their community buildings. So that's a little bit of a synopsis. Hopefully that was the right answer to your question, David.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom. Yes, wow. Give me just 3 seconds to taste it properly. Yeah, I think actually what you were mentioning a few things there, and Catalyst 2030, you know, the core value is people and nature at the center. And also the idea of, you know, you're mentioning mental health, well-being, you know, CO3 is also the idea of co-creating conscious collaborations. And we are actually trying within Catalyst to promote the idea of transitioning from the competitive-like model into a collaborative-like model. And I think more and more people are resonating. So I reckon this is one of the cores that we are, you know, trying to bring in our different initiatives here. So yeah, I mean, very, very relevant. So what we can do today, I'm gonna go also with Anton and Tom to tell us, for them to tell us a little bit more about their current initiatives and the call to action in their cases. And then we can open up the floor. I reckon that most of you might have some questions, but we would love actually to have a dialogue here about the idea of the CO3 Enchanted Village and the music, mystery and magic. Anton, can you please share with us, you know, your current initiatives? You already told us a little bit, but your current initiative and your call to action, and spread the message that you're bringing that is really, really strong.
Yes, sure. Yes, of course. I think probably the picture tells 1,000 words. So maybe I could share screen just to give people a feel for what we've created here at Salgars. And
yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So this is Salgars Estate, and you can see kind of a little flyover here. We have the mill house, we've got the cottages. Here's David sitting at one of the benches next to the River Calm, which wraps all around our site. And really what we're kind of in a really beautiful part of North Devon, Mid Devon, and we're about a 40-minute walk, 15-minute cycle from Tiverton main line station, Tiverton Parkway, which means we're quite accessible from Bristol and also from London. But we have all of these secluded grounds, and most of the site is south facing, so all of our spaces are just filled with amazing sunlight. We've got this lovely veg garden. David's in that photo too. Some wagons, some cottages, and what we're focused on is creating a place where we can have a number of different activities and events, from weddings to wellness retreats to educational programs, team building, corporates, as well as nature immersions and co-living. And in time, we want to really build out this longer term co-housing. And so we've got these beautiful event spaces where you can have a kind of sofa lounge, but also a long table dinner and a kitchen island. We've added glamping, we've got camping fields. We've also got extra accommodation from our neighbors, which can add extra bedrooms for executives that want to have privacy, so their own room, their own bathroom. We've done a big renovation in the barn. This was just a dumping ground when we arrived 4 months ago, and now we've created the floor, we've added the giraffe, we've added way more tables, and this becomes a really incredible gathering space where 100 people could sit in a circle, where we could have dance, we can have dinners, and a safe place to go if it rains. And so, yeah, this is kind of what Salgars Mill is, and have this beautiful Gandalf tree when you enter, which is this kind of willow tree that's the size of an oak, because it needed to kind of grow high in order to get sunlight, because there are these pine trees behind. And this is what greets you every time you come into the site, which gives you a feeling of anything is possible. And we started the year with a lovely little creative retreat for New Year's Eve, and yeah, we've been slowly transforming the site. I rebuilt the shower, we added Starlink internet to the barn, we've brought in paintings, more beds, rearranged the furniture, added art, and really leveled up the site so that we can host bigger groups in the summer. And central to how we are going to build this place is the Enchanted Village gathering. And this is the moment when we open up this conversation of what Salgars could be to a wider community. And this is a kind of unconference immersive event that will combine great food, wellness activities, musical performance, as well as lots of practical workshops, talks and discussions around the question of how do we live and work more regeneratively. And we'll look into questions around the future of housing, the future of fashion, but also how we regenerate ourselves and develop regenerative practice in our everyday lives. And so yeah, this is a beautiful event from the 6th to 9th of July this year. Some of the workshops, what does home mean to you? What type of ancestor do you want to be? Awaken your creative self, regenerating democracy, the farm of tomorrow, uncovering the mystery of refi and Web3, as well as looking at the future of what Salgars could become. And we've got 4 days of co-created and immersive content that will hopefully leave us feeling really refreshed and energized, but also feeling like giving us a taste of what a village could be like here at Salgars if we dare to dream about it. So yeah, that's the event, and we've got a great program of speakers and facilitators, and yeah, so hopefully you guys can join us, and yeah, and it's been a really amazing adventure these last 4 months, and it's only getting better. The sun is coming out. Most of the heavy infrastructure is done, and I'm in the middle of building this portal and weaving it with willow that we've chopped from the gardens. And yeah, it's a wonderful balance when you can balance screen time with land time. And it's a great joy and privilege to be able to build and make things, which is such a hard thing to actually do in the city. But when you get out to the countryside, there's so much space, there's so much raw materials, there's so many possibilities for creativity and creative expression, as well as nature connection. And we hope that, Salgars can become a place dedicated to a very particular type of community building and learning, focused on somatic intelligence and somatic awareness, where we're not just coming to think with our heads, but we're also activating our bodies and our emotions in order to get a deeper understanding of the problems that we're solving, and also how we're evolving as people. So we're bringing somatic exercises and workshops into the corporate and team building retreats that we're doing, and we've got a few signed up already, which is great. And I think on the weekend I went for a walk, and an idea came to me called Somos, which is Spanish for we are. And Somos will hopefully become a consultancy aimed at helping individuals and teams and organizations activate their somatic intelligence, that will help them to become more effective in the world that we see in front of us. And it's through rapidly shifting between different ways of thinking and working. So, an intense brainstorm around a specific problem, and then you do a nature walk or journaling by the river, or some movement exercises, or some breath work, or cooking together or doing yoga outside. And it's through this rapid transition between different ways of working and thinking and learning together that I think transformation can take place. So that's what we're up to. It's great fun. It continues to evolve with every week and every month. And there's nothing, and it's just so powerful to not just run a hotel, but to really make this place feel like a home. And that's central to what I think will make Salgars different. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Yes, actually, I also have the privilege to be in Salgars, and the energy there is incredible. And yeah, you can feel it. I mean, of course, here you are all invited, because I think it's worthy if you are around. Later on, Anton, you can put the link to the invite to the event in July, because it's going to be also quite an amazing place to be. And just quick thing, you were mentioning about, and that is also in the core, as we said, of catalyst. I think this is a perfect example. You are actually, Salgars is a catalyst, 2030 potential, because people and nature and connecting cities and the countryside is in the core of what you're doing. We also were sharing the possibility to connect, and you got the House of Transformation, which is a space in the city to also start that process and connect it with the countryside. And that is a perfect combination, because sometimes it feels that we don't have time. We are so busy in our daily activities. However, you can facilitate the process, going to these places, and then connecting them to the countryside. It will build another bridge. As we said, we are all bridge builders here. So yeah, that is great. So let's go with Tom, and then we'll open up a little bit the conversation. So in your case, Tom, I think Well Studio, and it's also participating in many initiatives, as you said earlier, to try to bring also this idea of what we call the share economy as well. The sharing is caring, as my kids say, and also in the architectural industry, with the property idea in mind. Many people now resonate with the, as you know, with the stewardship, shared property, even making all these of certifications in terms of well-being in buildings. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is your current line, and what is your call to action in what you are doing right now?
Sure, David. Yeah, let me do that. Let me share some slides and talk about that. So give me one sec. I'm going to try and do this professionally. Oh, it's so difficult. Okay, right, here we go. Okie doke. So let's just go with presenting this. Okay, so just to give you a really quick overview of some more of where we are, what we're up to in the studio. This is our studio. We're a little family. We work closely together. We create a community in the studio, and then we're architects. We're based in London, in Chelsea. We have 10 years experience of doing this practice, and I will tell you more in a sec. So here's our studio. This is us, happy family most of the time. And we basically have this ethos towards how we design spaces. So this is really foundational, this diagram, to what we are up to. This was created about 4 years ago at Conscious Co-Living, and it really informs also what we do at Well Studio. And it's this idea that, you know, basically when we design for communities, we can have this framework and we can create spaces that support this reconnection with ourselves, with each other, and with nature, or in other terms, support well-being, support thriving community and sustainability. And the other sort of input into our design philosophy is something called the Well Building Standard. Some of you may have heard of this, but it's really fast-growing sort of standard for designing spaces and buildings which support well-being and also operate with well-being. And it has these 7 elements of air, water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mind. And we've taken the exams and passed the exams and have this foundational knowledge in the well-building standard as well. And then we've kind of combined the well-building standard and our own experience and philosophy of well-being design into these 10 elements of well-being co-living design. So here we use light, air, sound, warmth, touch, community, nature, sustainability, aesthetics, and movement. And we try and design all of our buildings with these considerations in mind. And that's where what we think about when we're designing our spaces is how to make spaces which have all of these elements in them and support these elements in them. So then we think about who's going to live in the building and different types of people and how they will work together and how they are, where they are on the scale of introverted and extroverted. So looking at the types of people that are going to be in the space really informs how much shared space you might want to have and what kind of shared space you might want to have versus more private spaces for people to have individual rooms and sanctuaries. And then we look at also, again, depending on the types of people living in the building, what are the glue that they have? And the glue is a way we use to describe shared activities that create community. So it could be eating together, it could be gardening together, it could be doing well-being activities, or it could even be running a startup or some other kind of organization together. And then we look at the building and how we actually design a building. And in co-living buildings, there are 4 scales. There's the very small bedroom scale. There's how are those kind of bedrooms or studios arranged around clusters, and then how those clusters then build up to form the whole building and having that more shared spaces within the whole building. So this is almost like a fractal kind of geometry in terms of the way that the building's configured. And then where does that building sit within the neighborhood as well? And that's another scale really important to consider. And then we come up with something like this, maybe in the city. this is a cross-laminated timber constructed co-living building in a city block with ground floor and amenity spaces shared by the public, and then these clusters of different rooms above, all with their own shared spaces. And we might create something like this or something like this in terms of the spaces that people will inhabit, and look to then incorporate well-being into those spaces. Here's another concept design in Chennai in India for a co-living hotel. So here we had a brief from the client to create a new building that would be a hybrid of a hotel and co-living. Really interesting concept, but we also brought in a lot of ideas of biophilic design, and because of the hot climate in India, how can we naturally cool these spaces using very narrow courtyard areas that provide shading for rooms in those courtyards, and then using plants on balconies that again provide shaded balconies and also a connection to nature that you wouldn't otherwise have. And then how can we then stack all of these rooms on top of each other and create terraces that all face over the sea, and so provide sea views, and then incorporate photovoltaic panels and energy generation, a park around the edge, a kind of well-being spa zone on the top of the building, and really create a whole experience here of community well-being and sustainability. Some more diagrams. This rooms might look like the shared living spaces, some more images and renders of how the building might look. And then finally, just very quickly, another scheme that we think is quite nice to show is this is about really creating a mindfulness center. So this is brings in this well-being element, and it brings it into the city, and it says, okay, the city is very busy and it's very noisy and there's a lot of traffic and stress, but actually even in this environment we can create areas of calm, we can create areas of peace within the city, sanctuaries where people can come and actually relax their minds and their bodies, recharge and regenerate themselves. And that if we could have a building like this, which in this case is a mindfulness center inspired by the wake up practice which I do, which is the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition of mindfulness, the Plum Village tradition of mindfulness, bringing in some geometries around that, the Zen circle, the flower representing nature, how this how people in this center then go out into the city and practice their mindfulness with others. And then you create this kind of circular building with this kind of sanctuary inside it, protected from sound, a space which has greenery and life, a space which has views over the city. So these are just a few examples of some of the projects we're working on, or we've worked on at the moment. We have many, many more on the website, wellstudiocoliving.com. So do go and have a look at it there. And I hope that's given you a flavor just quickly for what we do.
Yes, wow. Just looking at those, yeah, I want one of those. Please add my name in the waiting list or whatever.
That's fine. Just come and say hi to us, David. And if you've got a few £1 million as budget, that's also most appreciated.
Well, actually, there are a few questions already in the chat, but I just wanted to say that you know, you were talking about a few things there, and you know, it came to me. Now in Catalyst 2030, there is a Catalyst marketplace, and there are more and more organizations coming and offering their services, you know, and social entrepreneurs. And as I said, we can talk a little bit more about that, because I reckon everything that you said is resonating so much what we are doing here, and we are all in this idea, as we said in the beginning, to help transitioning the competitive-like model into the collaborative-like model. So let's see if we can actually practice that as well. But there's also the idea of the well-being. And we also have a well-being group here in Catalyst, and actually Asha is a co-chair in that group and is with us. So it'll be great actually to start also that conversation, because we got a few initiatives right now trying to improve the well-being within the Catalyst community, but also making sort of programs to balance the online, all this Zoomy energy that we've been, creating with the COVID and the telework and the remote working and remote meetings into something more physical, balancing the physical gatherings, physical spaces, safe spaces, as you were suggesting, where you can actually bring different sort of energy and interactions. So I think everything is so much resonating. So let's do now this. Let's open the floor. Okay. So what we can do right now is, because we are a sort of cozy group, if someone is got a question, please raise your hand, and then you just say who you are, where you're calling from, your initiative, and if there is any reflection, question, suggestion. So we can go for a round for everybody here to be heard. We practice our idea of deep listening and understanding, and no repercussions. Everything that is happening in this session will stay in this session. So feel free. If you feel a little bit shy, I also love basketball. So I'll give a few seconds in case someone raised their hands. Otherwise, I'm gonna pass the ball to someone that I see is in a good position to shoot. Okay, we got Dean Lee, please, go ahead.
Hi guys, I'm calling from San Francisco, California, and I'm actually working on a sustainable cities case plan competition organized by Net Impact, and working with a couple of teammates on that. And the theme that we chose was inclusive growth. So we want to make sure like any sustainable cities are accessible to all people, not just like tailored towards a certain, like a small population of the society. So I'm very curious, the type of building that you're building and designing, what's your audience? And it's like the similar question as I put into the chat. And also, like, how do you ensure the inclusiveness? To all.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Lynn. Yes, affordability is a good question. Tom, do you want to go ahead with that?
Sure, thanks, Bentley. Great question. Yeah, so we, basically affordability, also disability, also how you design spaces for all ages, yeah, these are all considerations we have in our designs. The affordability question is a big one, and it's something that I think ultimately requires a government input into housing policy in terms of all kinds of housing, but also co-living. Because I think if you leave it to the private sector, they will obviously look for the most profit from their to generate from their housing, so they will always go for a rent which makes profit. But I think with co-living there are some opportunities to make it affordable innately in the way that co-living is designed, just because individual rooms actually don't need to be as large as in other types of living. So if you're just talking on a pure meter squared basis, then theoretically those rooms should be able to be more affordable, but then one has to think about the other spaces that are being put into the building and what their cost is, etc., etc. But yeah, my vision really for this kind of we at Well Studio really have a vision for affordable co-living, but I think we need a government policy to support that kind of vision, and then work with a public-private kind of partnership, developers and government subsidy or government input and planning system input to actually create co-living that's truly affordable for all the sectors of society.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom. Actually, we said in the beginning, Ben, that we need to integrate actually the SDGs, all this work in outside with the IDGs, the inner development goals, our own inner work. And I think what Tom just said, yes, it's more on the outside. But in the inside, we still need to do this shifting in mindset, because we are talking about ownership. Many people are now talking about shared property or stewardship, but are we really ready to really share? Because it's good to have to share things from others, but your own things, your own house, everything, you still need to go through that process. I reckon if we actually do that exercise in which ownership is not like Gollum in the Lord of the Rings. This is mine. No, this is ours. Then with that in place, we can also change a little bit things about when we're talking about affordability. It doesn't have to be buying a house against nothing. We can have something in the middle, and there is when there is an opportunity. There is a gap, but there is an opportunity. And I think we were talking also that we are all here bridge builders. So let's try to find, solutions in different levels, let's say. I don't know if, Anton, did you want to add something on this?
Something fun happened last weekend. We hosted 33 Muslim women at Selgaz. And I never imagined that Muslim women would choose to come here to do a community wellness gathering. But they did, and they loved it here. And they wanted to dance, and they wanted to paint, and they wanted to sit around a fire. And of course, they wore a headscarf whenever I was present, and they were practicing Muslims. But it was very interesting to see how actually similar our needs were, for community, for connection to nature. And actually, if we kind of put aside their clothing and their faith, actually they were just coming together in a very beautiful way, and very kind, warm people. And so I think that rather than trying to kind of over-engineer and think about every possible detail that would make a place feel inclusive, which is important to do, but I think actually affordability and just having the spaces where people can come together is far more important, and for them to be actually accessible to everyone. And I think the price point is key, so that actually everybody can afford to gather and make use of these types of spaces. And then Mike saying, what's affordable? Well, I think that it really it really depends on what is. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question, but I would say that it's right now a lot of very, very beautiful nature estates can only be it's 5,000-6,000 a day, and then we're trying to be at that kind of 1,000 to 2,000 a day for like 30 people with accommodation and venues. So that's a kind of ratio. And so we see, I think that it's far better, my philosophy, to create a space that's self-service with minimal staff and minimal costs, and then to build from there, than it is to employ loads of staff to create this really over-engineered, pampered 5-star experience that the only way to make it commercially viable is to charge crazy amounts. And then it's only for the super elite. And actually it then becomes very, very, it takes the joy out of running the place, because people that pay this much have all these expectations, and everything is so fancy and everything is so stressful. to make sure everything is perfect. Whereas actually a more affordable space that feels like a home where people actually create their own experience and they're happy to pick up chairs and make their own drinks and cook their own food lends itself to a much more enjoyable business, but also a much more affordable place. So I've kind of really looked at these third spaces and hospitality from a different direction, not more staff, more people, more service, but actually less service and actually more automated processes, more thoughtful engineering and, more thoughtful design so that it's flexible, but also easy to maintain. And then you let the nature do the rest, you know, beautiful plants, nice paintings without expensive frames, apart from this one. It's actually quite an affordable frame. But this taking the philosophy that actually less is more, and giving people the freedom to feel at home in your space. And those are the things we've kind of tried to do. But that's, of course, around event space. When it comes to housing, affordability, I think, comes down to trying to, you've always got a base land around the market value, so it's difficult to budge, but you can find efficiencies through communal spaces and also through self-build. That's an area which I think in the UK could really be pushed as a lever for change. When in the countryside and the suburbs, you know, there's a precedent for 15 to 20% of all of the new build housing to be self-built. So you buy a plot and then you commission the building of the house, obviously with professionals, in a way that is more affordable and gives you more freedom. And I think that self-build lends itself to being the point of innovation for housing development in this country, at least given our very rigid and complex planning rules. So that's my take. But I'm sure me and Tom will dive into this more in the months and years to come.
Well, that is a good one, actually, you know, because we are now opening this conversation about what we call regenerative finance. You know, it's not just about affordability in terms of being able to go to these places or to buy these amazing well-being houses, but it's also about redefining, you know, financing and maybe the whole economic system at some point, because we also need to look at things with this idea of flexibility. You know, it doesn't mean you need to have a price for everything for everyone. You gotta be flexible. And then if we bring also, again, the IDGs, I love IDGs, so I'm gonna say a lot this thing. The IDGs of looking at things from the abundance point of view rather than from the scarcity point of view. And when we talk about money, everything is more about scarcity. When we talk about energy or other ways to really do things in a regenerative way, we can find other potential solutions. And I think there, if you are flexible, you know, even we're talking with Anton, you know, you can have a price for a corporate event, but if there are other people coming, maybe you can be flexible enough to accommodate them, you know, and make this sort of dynamic pricing depending on the people, the dates and everything. So I reckon there are still ways to try to avoid this scarcity thing when we face the idea of pricing on money. But that is a whole conversation that is now going on with the refi, or what I call redefi. I wanted also to cap the opportunity to give the ball to Asha, because Asha is the co-chair of the Wellbeing Group in Catalyst. And I think it's quite relevant what we were talking and Tom was sharing earlier. Asha, if you are there, is in Australia, is a little bit late. You might be tired, but you want to give us a little bit of your great energy?
Thanks, David. Like I said, I'm not feeling that good, but if you don't mind me spluttering and whatever, No, Tom and Anton, really love what those ideas and this conversation that's going on. And I know Mike's been, talking about $1, €1 houses in Italy, and then there's these tiny houses that people are going towards. And I had a thought in that direction too, in the sense that, Tom, what you're doing with this well-being houses, which I think is a brilliant, way of thinking. And I love the model you have, with the elements that go into designing and building places. And there's so many thoughts in my head, I can't put them all together, but thinking like these tiny houses that people are going towards now, because it's really hard to find anywhere to live, and then I look at some of them, and yes, that's good, but how are they in terms of well-being? So is there something where those elements can be taken even to tiny houses wherever they are, but then coming back to that community thing, and excuse me, how you have co-learning, co-working, co-living, and I'm thinking, should we have co-building in there? So should it be eco-4? But yeah, so so I think that co-building thing is interesting. Like, instead of everyone like coming and building their own house, can it be like in the old days, in the pioneer days, some young couple got married, and then the whole community would get together and build them a house. So they had their own house to live in, move away from mom and dad and go and live in their own house. And so some going back to that sort of thing, where, and then they kind of, you see that sometimes, the whole village will come together, and within one day they've put up a house. So is that something that's possible? And then if that happens, then your rent is paid for, kind of thing, in your labor, kind of, like you don't pay rent, you pay in action. And I think, Tom, you're the one who was saying in your young days and how it didn't matter how much money you didn't have. You could all get together and live, like, so can we get back to that? And it's just such an interesting thing to think of. And I mean, in my case, I'm thinking, okay, what happens for older people? What can they contribute? And so maybe there's a way for different people to contribute differently. Maybe older people can be the ones that are looking after the kids when the younger people are building the house, whatever, or could be making the sandwiches, whatever, so something, bring it back to community. And it's just so exciting. I just want to be there now, but let's, and I would love to be in July in Devon, but I don't know how that's going to happen. Let's see. Let's put it out there for the universe. And yeah, and I'd love to get some answers to Mike's questions too, because he's put some interesting ones in there. And like, so in that terms of what is affordability, and what is the minimum you need to have that kind of life. And not just for people who don't have the money, but even for people who do. Because if you're not spending the money on this, you could be putting it towards other good causes. So, that kind of shared kind of economy, I don't know, maybe it's being too radical, but anyway, put all those thoughts out there.
Thank you, Asha. Yeah, that's such a huge range of thoughts and ideas. It's really inspiring to hear. And maybe I can come back on just a few that I picked out while you were talking. I think tiny homes are great. I think really for well-being, actually, the size of the space isn't necessarily the biggest factor. It's more about if we have our core needs met, and we are in a space which is designed in a way that facilitates those core needs and gives us a sense of well-being when we're in that space, and maybe is connected to nature, has good levels of natural light, has good air quality, good water quality, provides, you know, a little bathroom, but it doesn't have to be huge, where we can have a shower. And actually, you know, coming back to the mindfulness tradition that I'm part of, when we really think about what we actually need to be well, it's not really that much. In fact, a lot of what I think happens in society is that people think they need more because they're conditioned to think they need more, because they compare themselves to others that have more. But actually, if we come back to health is wealth, and this kind of concepts like health is wealth, if we're well in our bodies, if we're well in our minds, we don't need a lot of material space or a lot of material possessions, actually. And if we're connected to others in community, that's even more true. And what you then went on to talking about all kinds of living and how we, like a village idea of, you know, this tribal idea of that we evolved as tribes. We evolved as tribal communities of intergenerational communities of different ages that supported each other in this kind of what's the right word, you know, like every person has a certain place within that community that has a certain skill that then actually gives that to others, and others give other skills back to them, and everyone has their place, like in nature, like in ecosystems. How can we live like that, and how can that work? The further question is really, how does that work in our current economic climate? You know, like, how do we not get out competed by the bad big developers that go and take up all the land and you know, can build luxury flats on it, and therefore, you know, the money that this village community can actually gather together isn't enough to get the land. You know, how do we not get out competed? But I think that over time we can create this, and I think really well knit tight families and communities of any kind, if they work together, you're totally right. Like, it can create opportunities to create these much more collectivized ways of living, where people support each other, and sharing is actually a wonderful idea, because it multiplies the benefits of something. Like, you've got a swimming pool. If you just keep it to yourself, you can only use it yourself. If you give it to 100 people, boom, that's 100 people have a swimming pool. So, you know, finding that balance as well, though, between collectivization and individual needs, you know, that there is definitely a balance to be found there. But I think all these things are kind of like possible, but what I'm really concerned with is, how do we actually get it done in reality? You know, and yeah, within the current system that we exist within, and then hopefully these things start to change the system. As they happen, they start to change the fundamental system around them, and then it becomes easier and easier. So those are a few of my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Tom. Wow. Yes. I mean, again, this this is opening up many different roads here. But I want to hear everybody here. We still got like 15 minutes, and I think Mike Reid, I'm going to pass you the ball, because you've been asking a few questions. Would you mind to tell us a little bit about you, and then making the questions that you feel, or suggestions that you feel they are right for this conversation? Go ahead, please.
I am trying to abolish poverty. We've got some traction. I think 15,000 families have gotten themselves out of poverty after taking a survey to figure out where they are in housing, income, personal motivation, self-esteem, education, health, and connection to the community. Those are the 6 dimensions of multidimensional poverty. Some folks in Paraguay created something called the poverty stoplight, where it's now in 50 countries, the poverty stoplight methodology. Housing is one of those 6 dimensions. So we at Agros Ventures are looking for solutions to help people, once they've taken the survey, and that can happen in a mobile phone, an iPad, or a piece of paper, on a clipboard in a rural part of Paraguay, which is where it started. Once they've taken that survey and answered 50 questions about themselves in those 6 dimensions, they then look at their reds, yellows, and greens. Reds meaning extreme poverty, yellow poverty, green no poverty. And they say to themselves, the next phase of is, okay, so your reds and yellows, why are they where they are? What are you going to do about it? And when? So they create a life plan, a life map. And then they, if it's really cool and well implemented, they connect to resources in the community. So community-based support. So that's what we are doing at Agros Ventures. We're helping that model to expand. And it's just thrilling to hear about the creative approaches to the space. I guess I'll wrap up by saying I wish that more people were. I come from Vancouver, British Columbia. I live in Los Angeles, California. Here in North America, the mindsets are not the same. It's frustrating to me. I feel like, people want to be more private. People don't necessarily want community all the time. And I guess maybe there's a whole spectrum, but I don't know. It's just thrilling to meet you all, to hear about this amazing creativity, to learn about the fact that it is economically sustainable, and I really look forward to continuing this conversation. You wanted me to say something, so I don't know if there's a question there, but that's who I am, and I loved your I should tell you. Here, I'll tell you. I got to just say, humility, transparent, radical. Your phrase was radical humility. Let's just put that word radical in front of transparency, honesty, equity, and proactive communication. These are the 5 core building blocks to trust: humility, transparency, honesty, equity, and proactive communication. And so I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and the best decision I ever made was marrying my wife 38 years ago. My computer's about to run out of juice here at 5:21 in the morning in Los Angeles. There, I plugged it in. But I really appreciate this group, and I will stop talking. Thank you all for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. I got a little bit of goosebumps now. And congrats on the good work that you're doing, first of all, and the energy that you are showing right now, and is creating this sort of push in the collective. What you just said, it was quite inspiring, actually. And yeah, I think we are all here to help each other, and we are all lifelong learners. So we need to learn from each other. And everything that is happening in one part of the world, the good thing of the technology is that we can share it and learn from it. So if we do that good use of the technology, things can happen in the direction that we all want to see. So I reckon that is the spirit in here, as we said earlier, and that is actually in the DNA of Catalyst 2030. But not only Catalyst 2030, there are so many initiatives out there right now resonating in the same frequency. So hopefully, yes, we are in a very interesting times. We don't have all the answers yet, but they might come. And hopefully conversations like this one can also bring a little bit of light But I didn't want to pass this reflection that you gave us. Any comment on that, Tom or Anton? Please go ahead.
No, I think just great to hear your passion for what you're doing, and I think it's always great to see someone who cares deeply about their work. And of course, yeah, poverty is a very complex and big question, and housing is a critical part of that. And I think, yeah, one other thing I would add was there is a lot of real estate out there that can be repurposed and reimagined. We often feel like we need to, build thousands of homes on fields, and in some cases we do, but there's a lot of buildings. And one of the beautiful things about a lot of modern cities is how they've adapted, and how actually and there's so many places in the countryside that could be reimagined by having people come move into the existing accommodation, but also extend. And I think that's a really big opportunity all around the world, because you can combine working with what's already there with the existing infrastructure, add the tiny homes, renovate some buildings, do some new builds, and actually, as much as we do need to build more cities, I think actually it's far more effective to build smart villages instead. And cities will grow, but we don't need to concentrate everything on cities. We solve the housing crisis also in our rural areas. So that would be the final point.
Anything to add, Tom?
Not a lot. I thought it was really inspiring, Mike, what you were sharing, and yeah, I think I like what Anton shared as well, actually, about repurposing buildings. I think that's something that does have huge potential, and we have all kinds of funny situations, for instance, in London, where properties are used as land banks by the rich, but actually there's no one living in them. And there are other buildings which, are just sitting there waiting for a developer to do something with them. But actually, why not go in there and start repurposing them immediately and do something with them? And I think with co-living, you can convert old office buildings into co-living. You can convert all kinds of buildings into co-living, and that's a great way to also increase density and build more places for people to live. So if you do all those things in the right way, that also supports well-being. Yeah, I think there's huge opportunities both in the cities and, like Anton says, in the countryside. Yeah, let's just go and do it. That's what I'm thinking right now. Yeah, let's go and do it. And it's great that Anton's actually doing this in his Selgar's Mill, at Selgar's Mill. So there you go. There's a real life example of someone that's doing it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tom. I think, yes, we need more real life examples. Actually, one of them, another co-chair in the Europe chapter, Mel Young, he's leading a program for homeless people, and they're doing a sort of competition. They go all over Europe playing football, playing sports, and they got the sponsoring. So there are different ways, not only just homeless or meaning you need a home or not. You need to reactivate your life in different ways. So there are people actually trying to do this, and it's happening, but maybe not to the level that we need. So as much energy as we can put there, that's better. So we are about to wrap up, just a couple of minutes. Just wanted to, again, be grateful with, your time and energy. Thank you so much, Anton. Thank you so much, Tom. And also to Nikita, to give us this space and managing the call, and to all the attendees. In this case, Asha and Mike, for your energy as well. Hopefully this is an ongoing conversation that we all learn from each other. Let's keep this collective energy rolling on. Just as we said, for checkout, we can go with one word each. So I'm going to pass the ball to Anton.
Gratitude. I'll pass it on to Tom.
Community.
Pass the ball.
Oh, I'm passing it on to Mike.
Love.
Pass the ball, Mike.
Asha, you got the ball.
I'm catching it. Thanks. Repurpose. To make it.
Thank you, Asha. Mine would be community. And I would like to pass it to David.
Okay, well, I'm going to have a little trick here. I would say AI in the sense of alignment and integration. Allow me this liberty. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thanks a lot, David.
May we see you again.
May
we meet again.
Great to meet all.